our human guy picks it up, and it's his source, and he's like, hey, we're at this restaurant. We're just screaming through traffic in downtown Baghdad, and really big commercial sector. So it's traffic jam. We're like up on curbs, and old ladies are dropping their groceries, and we pull up onto this sidewalk right in front of the restaurant. It probably the coolest thing I've ever seen, because I throw the back door of the van open. I jump out. This guy who has a white dish dash on over top his body armor and everything jumps out and just kind of throws it up like a fistful of dollars or something, and like billows off of him, and he picks up his M4 and runs into the restaurant.
Welcome to Combat Story. I'm Ryan Fugit, and I served Warzone tours as an Army attack helicopter pilot and CIA officer over a 15-year career. I'm fascinated by the experiences of the elite in combat. On this show, I interview some of the best to understand what combat felt like on their front lines. This is Combat Story. Today we have round 2 of our incredible combat story with John Dailey, the former Marine Force Recon operator who was one of the very few selected to help stand up what was known then as Detachment One, and which would lead to the creation of MARSOC that we know today. If you missed round 1, I strongly recommend you take a look, but if you can't, John grew up on the East Coast hunting and shooting, and in the 9th grade visited a Marine recruiter who took him under his wing until it was time to enlist, years later. He went straight into a sniper unit and then served as a Marine security guard at embassies in Hungary and Argentina before joining Force Recon. On 9/11, John was in a bar in Australia with the Marine Expeditionary Unit when he saw the towers come down on TV. He and his Force Recon unit were sent directly to Afghanistan, where they took the fight to the Taliban months after the attacks. This second round interview picks up after John returns from this first deployment and sets the ground for his book that will be released in August 2024, aptly titled Tough Rugged Bastards, a Memoir of a Life in Marine Special Operations, that describes both John's experiences and the beginning of MARSOC from his perspective on the ground. I hope you enjoy this experience of combat and truly the weight of the Marine Corps on the shoulders of a small group of men like John as much as I did. How are you feeling getting back on that ship, heading out of that? I mean, I have to imagine for those of us who were sitting at home watching this and furious at what had happened in September, would have given anything to be there, and you were actually there fighting.
Yeah, it was. I mean, it was awesome. I won't sugarcoat it.
No.
But the other side of it, though, is that everybody here, everybody was back in the States when that happened. Whether you're in high school or wherever you were, obviously where you were, and there was this huge outpouring of American spirit. I think we kind of missed out on that, and I don't regret it for a minute, being where I was, but like we really didn't know what was happening in the States. We would get some news clips like played on the television, days later or whatever. But so that whole collective experience that America, had, we missed that. So that was I wouldn't, like I said, I wouldn't trade it. But we got back on the boats, got to stop again in Australia. This time they were just like, hey, don't burn the place down. In Sydney, they're like 4 or 5 days. Just go sow your wild oats, spend all the money that you've accumulated on this deployment, and so I had a blast there. And then we came home, and really kind of came home as it's kind of a cool feeling to walk back to work and be like, yeah, we kicked some ass. All right,
That's amazing. So yeah, very eventful first deployment, effectively like right in the heart of the fight with the enemy. You come back, and I believe, just from what I have been able to gather from your book, Tough Rugged Bastards, you get tapped not too long thereafter. Just is it 2004 to start thinking about this next, kind of reincarnation, Detachment One, the Raiders?
Yeah, so we got back in, probably would have been about March of 2002. I had, at that point, I'd been at First Force Recon for over 9 years, and they're like, man, you got to go somewhere. So I went to and we really, we had no idea that the war was going to continue.
Yeah.
As I mentioned, I had plans to take my family and go back to Marine Security Guard duty and work overseas. But, my wife was apprehensive about, taking the kids overseas at that time, obviously. And I
Yeah.
was not really interested in doing something that was going to take me that far away from, the fight.
Hmm.
So I moved just right down the street to this is called the Special Operations Training Group, and our function was to train the Force Recon Marines and the snipers and the Recon Battalion folks and other like our SIGINT collection guys in urban reconnaissance and surveillance and urban sniper operations. So before they would deploy, they would come through our training. Um, and I loved that. And I really at that point got the love for teaching. I'm like, hey, there's so much. Plus, I knew at this point that every person I taught was going straight to combat. So we just kind of dismantled all of the curriculum and said, hey, let's start from scratch. We knew what are all the things people need to know. We knew one of the things that after years of peacetime, you realize that a whole lot of kind of training isms have worked their way into what you're doing.
Yeah.
So, taking the time to sit down and say, why are we doing this? And why are we doing it this way? Or why are we carrying this here? Wouldn't it make more sense to do it here? Like, well, it's a training thing. Well, we're not fucking training anymore. Let's, do
And
things
this
the
is
way that
all,
we're gonna.
yeah, coming out of combat, like basically what you
Yeah.
just experienced
So it
and
was
applying it.
a great opportunity to come back and be able to give back, some things that I learned or things I'd validated, and I added in a ton of what I call combat mindset classes, and we're really talking about these things, like trying to prepare people for, hey, here's what's going to happen to you, likely, and then really digging into that, you learn that you just lose fine motor skills, so if there's something that has to be done that requires fine motor skills, try to find another way to do it, because it could be hard to do, like proper trigger manipulation or changing magazines, things like that. If you could find a way to do it that's, slapping the magazine release with your palm instead of trying to poke it with a finger, because that's going to be
Hmm.
really hard. So a lot of changes kind of came out of that, not from me necessarily, but from us sitting down and saying, hey, let's look at the way we're doing things and see if there's a better way to do them. But even at this point, there were kind of rumors going around that, hey, the Marine Corps is going to have to form this unit that's going to be assigned to SOCOM.
Yeah. And you mentioned earlier that Coates taps you for this, but he hasn't come up yet. Was he in the period kind of pre 9/11, post getting into recon?
So he was in at First Force. He was the commander there while I was there. He had left just before. He was just before that deployment, and he actually went to the Special Operations Training Group to be the boss over there. So when I got there, he kind of pulled me over and said, "Hey, I want you to." So that's how I wound up there. And then I said one day we were attending a meeting or something, and he was like, "Hey, I want to talk to you. You know, I'm leading this unit. This is something you want to do." Yeah.
Of course.
You even need to ask. No, yeah.
And I think I read you're one of 4 team leaders selected for this.
Yeah, so there were four of us, and then later is the and when we stood up with nothing, right? So no idea of where we're going to deploy or what our mission would be. We were kind of assuming it would be Afghanistan, but no equipment, no buildings to put our equipment in, no buildings to like hang out in, no weapons, no, I mean nothing whatsoever. We were starting this from scratch. So the Marine Corps, the decision was the Marine Corps would fund it. So the Marine Corps like coughed up a chunk of money, and we had people just you know on Amazon or not, whatever the military version of Amazon, just ordering
Hmm.
weapons, ordering equipment, ordering vehicles, and just they threw up some temporary shelters for us, and so things start showing up.
I've interviewed a couple guys who ended up early on in MARSOC, but I think after Detachment One. But what they had communicated was this weight, this pressure to make sure that you all did really well so that SOCOM and everybody else would basically accept you because everyone was looking at you all, I think, from the beginning is the way it was described. Like, are they going to be good enough? They're not part of this community, really. How are they going to measure up? Did you feel that weight as you
Absolutely. I
started?
mean, that was so ultimately the decision was that we were going to go to Iraq and we were going to deploy essentially as a SEAL platoon. So we were going to work underneath Navy Special Warfare Commander. And because of that, we realized that our missions were primarily going to be direct action missions. So we took the 4 teams and we kind of divided them into 6. So we actually deployed with 6 teams. My assistant team leader became a team leader, and one of the others. So we wound up with, like, I had a 5-man team. We had very small teams, but it was
Wow.
well suited for the assault type of just fast raids that we were doing. But yeah, we were a little nervous, realizing that, hey, we're going to deploy, and the Navy's going to be the guys who are giving us missions or not giving us missions, and really determining how well we did or didn't do. But we were, and it was not a secret really that the Army wasn't big fans of this whole
Really? Yeah.
experiment. The Marine Corps wasn't a big fans of it either. So we really didn't have anybody in our corner other than ourselves. Which there's value in that. It's time to throw up the shield wall and just
Yeah.
freaking go to work, which is what we did. I think the one of our platoon sergeant was a guy who was really, really good friends with Opalski, and had spent, or after this, wound up being the first Marine to go to the other unit that Opalski spent time at. Um, and he really kind of set the tone. He's like, hey man, we have nothing. The only thing, everybody has a large house pack, because you own it, right? Because you're a professional, and that's what, if you're a plumber, you better have a wrench or two. If you're a recon Marine, you better have your own ruck. So he's like, bring your rucks in, we'll load them up, and we can ruck. So we would, just 20-mile rucks were like commonplace up through the mountains of Pendleton. And when you have a group who was very, very senior at this point. I mean, I was the youngest team leader initially as a E7. We had E7s, E8s.
That's amazing. Wow.
Almost all of the, and unheard of in the Marine Corps, almost all of the, because I went from leading a 30-man platoon to a 5-man team, and it was awesome. um, we had like the youngest guys we had were all E5s, most were E6s. So when you have a group, there's a lot of big personalities, there's a lot of, it could be a lot of big attitudes, and it it wasn't that. I mean, humbling, it's throwing on a heavy ruck and just going, humbles you, right, to a certain degree.
Yeah.
And we did that a lot, and it really kind of served as the force that really brought us all together kind of tight as a unit. Um, and we did that for a long time until weapons showed up and other equipment, and there was actually other things that we could do. But we kind of followed with Colonel Coates. He's like, you kind of follow the same training cycles that we normally would. We spent a lot of time on live tissue training, on medical training, a lot of time on communications training, a lot of time obviously on the range. And because I had just coming from leading that sniper course, and with my
Yeah.
experience, he kind of tapped me to, hey, be the guy who manages our sniper program. And we had a wealth of guys who were really, with a lot of experience sniping. So that wound up being one of the things that we were called on to do quite a bit.
So this is going to be a slightly odd question. I think I haven't, as far as I can recall, asked somebody this before. But as you describe being an E7, so you probably have 16 years in at this point.
Yeah, yeah,
Okay.
about that.
So very experienced leading a small team, as you said. Is there a time frame where you feel like you're at your prime to do something like that? Is it when you're 10 years in? Is it when, like, 15, 16? When is the optimal time of kind of physical prowess, but also enough wisdom to lead in that scenario?
I think I was kind of in the sweet spot
Yeah.
about then. I think I might have been the wisdom. It might have taken me a little longer than the average Joe to build some of that, but I really felt that I was like in the best shape of my life,
Hmm.
and I had seen enough uh, that I generally knew, kind of I knew what I needed to do at any given time,
Yeah.
and not enough that I not so much that I kind of become jaded to some things.
Yeah.
So it was, yeah, I really felt, there were a couple of the team leaders. One of them was a little bit older and had a little, a couple of years, but he'd been rode hard a little bit longer, been beat up a little bit, and
Yeah.
got hurt on deployment and had to get sent home, right? And that's the kind of thing that you obviously don't want to have happen. I had a near miss in one of our training events in Bridgeport, California. We were doing mountain climbing and was climbing a one of the lanes, practice lanes that we were doing, and was fell. Messed. Didn't break it, but I messed my ankle up pretty good, and was very very nervous that that was going to lead to them booting me. So I'm like, man, tape it up, do what you got to do, but I got to keep going.
I almost envision at that point you're kind of like a pro. I mean, you're at the elite level, like you've made it through 0311 sniper recon. Now you're at this next level. You're kind of like a pro QB in your prime, kind of having to operate at a very high level at this point.
Yeah, yeah. I mean, so yeah, there wasn't a lot of room for being injuries or things like that. There just wasn't time for it. But luckily, I was able to keep keep limping along until it. I still have a limp, but it's probably something that if I would have dealt with properly then,
Properly.
yeah. But it was worth it, I guess.
There is something I can't even count the number of Marines I've talked to who have fought through an injury out of fear that they were going to get pulled from something. So it sounds like it's pretty commonplace in
Yeah.
the Marine Corps. Okay, so can you take us through that first deployment with Detachment One? Kind of what is Coates or whoever at the high level saying to you? What are you talking to your guys about going into this to prepare mentally?
All right. Like I said, initially we kind of assumed, or I don't know if we were told or thought that it would be Afghanistan, and we thought that our mission was going to be reconnaissance. One of the things that it had been very challenging in Afghanistan was to get boots on the ground, get eyes on a target for any length of time. Obviously, there was, the SEALs had issues. There have been other it's tough. I mean,
It's hard.
it's really tough to do any more than one cycle of darkness. When the sun comes up, people who've lived in the hills all their lives know that something's wrong.
Yeah.
All right. So, we were kind of working on that problem. How can we do that? And then, like I said, we get told that, hey, you're going to deploy underneath the SEAL command structure and you're going to Iraq. So we were going to be responsible for the area in and around Baghdad. There and one of the decisions that were made was that Coates was the same rank as the Navy commander that we were going to work with. So he wasn't allowed to. He came to Iraq with us, and then they sent him to go do some other work off by himself. So
That
he
must have
was.
been tough for him.
Oh, it had to have been super tough, but he was, had supreme confidence and
Yeah, I'm sure
kind
he
of
trusted you guys.
his next to command was he's retired now, but was a major lieutenant colonel within that time, a guy named Craig Kaczynski, who just a super long ball hitter. And when we got there, we really lucked out. The Navy commander uh, thought very highly of us and was absolutely gave us a straight shot. Gave us everything that we needed, and didn't show any favoritism or anything like that. And it was a good opportunity to kind of show what we had. So we got there. The problem was the SEAL teams were kind of dispersed throughout the country. There were ODAs that were in and around Baghdad, but they were doing kind of doing their own thing. We were working with a Polish Grom unit from the Polish Special Forces who had just got to country as well. But we were really the first guys, so there wasn't really somebody to do a RIPTOA, right? To say, hey, here's all the target packages that we have. So how do you show up in Iraq and just build your own? And that's where I mentioned that almost a third of our number were intel folks, and we had some phenomenal intel guys. Some of them we had guys coming from that had been at the NSA, had been different places. So people with just a wealth of experience, and probably one of the coolest things ever. One of the intel analysts was just going through reading intel reports and noticed that he'd read a couple and he was going back in time and reading them, just trying to get a picture, and realized he's like, man, there was a Iraqi interpreter working for the Americans that was killed. Here was another one, 2 months ago, here was another one. And he wound up compiling this list that there were something like 20 some.
Oh.
So then, he does what a intel nerd does, right? He starts like with like yarn and making
Yeah.
like a little chart on the wall, and figures out, he's like, hey, they're all connected by this one person. Um, so we're like, well, hey, let's go fuck that person up. So, but and so I was picked for that mission, and I was picked for it because it was kind of an unusual mission, and throughout our training, one of the kind of my mantra was like, hey man, we'll do whatever. So anytime there was a mission that was a little bit unusual or less appetizing or appealing, right? If it involved like laying out in the freezing cold in Nevada for a couple of days, I'm like, hey, we'll do it. So yeah, that paid off, right? So they're like, Daly, you've got this mission. We're going to go after this person. Um, but it had to be very low, kind of low signature. So I was only allowed to take one of my guys, a human exploitation guy. I had to take a SEAL who had kind of been in the area and had some uh, knowledge of the area. And this interpreter that we're going after was a woman. So I had to take a woman. And
What?
yeah. So fortunately,
Wow.
the Grom had one female operative named Kate. And Kate had killed more people than bone cancer. All right, Kate was a badass. So it's me, another Marine, one of our human Marines, a SEAL, and Kate. Like in cities, in a sedan or two sedans, just you know driving through downtown Baghdad, middle of the day, in 2004, right?
Oh my
Which is
gosh.
so we get to the place where this lady had worked, and the concern was not her necessarily, but that she was kind of a valuable asset, so that there'd be people keeping an eye on her. So yeah, so there might be some, a car down the block or whatever with a couple of guys that are just watching. So we go in, kind of playing that we want to hire an interpreter. We're trying to, get her, ask for her finally by name, and they're like, oh yeah, she doesn't work here anymore. She's down the road. So we're down the road, and this happens like throughout the course of the morning. We're just getting farther and farther and farther away from base. And every place we go, she was just there. She was there last week. It's
Oh,
Tuesday.
jeez.
So we finally get to a small army outpost, and she had worked there, but she had just quit. And so, of course, everything going through my head, somehow she knew that we were kind of closing in on her, whatever. Um, so I talked to the officer that was in charge of the place and said, "Hey, man, can you?" And he had her contact information. I'm like, "Can you call her, tell her that she left a hat here, or I don't know, you have a paycheck for her, or whatever. Just tell her something to get her in." And so we wait a couple of hours, and eventually she shows up, and walks into the room. Kate subdues her, and we grab the man who was driving the vehicle that she was in, because we assumed that he might be in on it. Um, Take her back, and at this point, our human guys were allowed to do our own interrogations. This was barely, I mean, this was like a month before Abu Ghraib kicks off. So, uh, as soon as they start talking to this lady, they realize, one, that yes, she was responsible, but two, she was absolutely unwittingly responsible.
Oh,
So she had, so it's, I mean, obviously what a honeypot operation is,
yeah.
right? So
Could you
this,
describe that for people who are listening in case they haven't heard this?
so yeah, in a honeypot operation, if a female who is far more attractive than you have any right to deserve comes up and starts like fawning over you, and then asks for, hey, can you give me your boss's phone number, or can you give me this or give me that, like they'll start off kind of asking for small favors, and those favors get bigger and bigger. um, so this was kind of the opposite of that. It's like a honey stick operation, whatever you want to whatever you want to call it. But she was not an attractive woman, but apparently this guy had wooed her, and she had given up, um, you know, the
Hmm.
company mail, birthday list or email list with addresses and names, and so these people were just getting clipped kind of wholesale. So once she realized that, she was distraught, obviously, as you would be. But she was also wanted some revenge. So she was, eager to cough up this guy's name and address and everything. And so our first kind of assault mission was going out and actioning that target. And we grabbed that guy. We're like, you just like, hey, who else do you know that's an asshole? And you go visit their houses. And so then we started, working our way up the tree, and ultimately hitting, finding some high value targets that a lot of people had been looking for a while.
That is one of the greatest stories that I've heard on this show. So, just quick question. Does that female translator who is unwittingly kind of been used, does she get a chance to see this asshole who kind of did this to her again by any chance?
We did not give her that opportunity. Yeah, we
Sadly.
yeah, eventually, once we discovered kind of what had happened, and she had,
Yeah,
helped, she was, I assume she was cut loose. I don't know what
I'm
became of
sure.
her
Yeah.
after that.
Oh, geez. Um, so you mentioned you kind of work your way up and get some HVTs. Do you remember, was there one op in particular or target that you hit that you felt like, hey, this could put us on the map if we do this right? This is going to get the attention and show people we're the real deal here.
Yeah, so when we arrived, the only information that we were given was that there were two HVTs that were just like a little shadowy silhouette on the target board. All right.
Starting from zero.
One was, they were calling X, and one was called Z. I don't know. I never even asked at the time if there had been a Y and somebody had like clipped him or whatever, but X and Z, and these were like serious, kind of bad dudes. One of them had been a former regime element leader, one of the deck of cards guys, um, and both we got probably the cooler. Both were cool. Both were cool. So if we got time, I'll go
Yeah,
through.
go for it,
So
please.
yeah, X, we started hitting people close to him, and we started, I mean, both these guys, great tradecraft, never slept in the same place twice. It's always moving. But we wound up grabbing a bunch of people at a farm that we went out to, and they all had a very, very like striking family resemblance. And they were telling us that, yeah, this guy that you're looking for, he's my uncle, he's this, he's that. So our intel guys were like, like, hey, if they all kind of look like this, he's probably, so they did a whatever, mock up, like he probably looks like this. Um, so I forget with him how well, one of our human guys had a source that had uh, provided some information, and we roll in and we grab a couple of people. We bring them off the target, and they all just start pointing at him. They're like, hey, that's the guy you want, that's the guy you want. and he looked, a whole lot like what we thought he should look like. He was also super, super cool in interrogation. He's like, no, 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 man, I'm just a
Wow.
farmer, bro. Uh, we brought in family members, and they're like, no, this guy is what? Here's ID and things like that. Um, so eventually he was like, yeah, okay, I was screwing with you. Yeah, this is my name, but I'm not a bad guy. I'm just a simple farmer. And this was at the point when the Iraqi interim government was taking control. And so, people like this were not going to get thrown in, Abu Ghraib anymore. Like they were going to go to a court. They were going to like have their day in court. And in order for this knucklehead to get put away, we were going to have, a confession, or we were going to have proof. So we had spent a little bit of time running a security detail for the Iraqi interim government. We were personally responsible for the vice president, and the vice president was a Kurd. All right, so this is a
Mm,
kind of a long story, but this guy Raish Shawways, who had been a Peshmerga guy, he was
yeah.
a badass. Now he was like, and if you're like unfamiliar with the geopolitical situation, I know you're not, but
No,
the
go for it.
Kurds are not liked by anybody. All right, so the Shias, Sunnis, everybody in Iraq, they all,
Turks. Yeah.
yeah, everybody hates the Kurds. Um, so, the fact that this guy was vice president was kind of a big deal. A lot of people wanted to kill him. But when we start digging into this guy X, like I said, he had been a former regime element guy, and we'd actually been able to find, information that pretty reliable that he was responsible for the execution of a lot of Kurds. I mean, there was like gas used on them and things like that. So somebody was like, hey, what if we talk to the vice president and see if we can't take this guy out to Kurdistan and just give him to them? And we're like, well, fuck, we probably can't do that, but that's a good idea. Let's work with it. So we wound up flying a helo with this vice president, this guy with a hood on, a couple of our guys out to the area where he was from, and there was definitely a heavy, Kurdish security infrastructure there. So we bring this guy, throw him over to some angry Kurds. They pull him into a room, pull his hood off, and he's staring at them, and they're like, you're talking, or we're going to start cutting. And that was not going to happen because we were, and
Yeah.
I
You were
wasn't
there.
there, but it was a ruse, obviously. But yeah, he started talking, and that took him off the board. That really kind of significantly damaged the what we were really nervous about. There was a heavy influx of bombers prior to uh, the first full election. So this
Yeah.
interim government had been installed, but they were preparing for a full up election. So and that got us closer to this other guy Z, right? Who is I mean, they had been looking for him for years and couldn't get close to him. So, after we finish with X, get him done, one of our human guys was able to get a source that was able to get close to him and actually became his driver. So
No
I mean,
way.
this you know, we had several sources who had been like killed, like, their families, or because these guys had figured out who they were. Um, so this relatively young kid, right, had his family had been, killed, you know, by uh, these insurgents, and so he was pissed basically, and so this guy was like freaking under just deep undercover. Hey, I'll be his, worked his
The
way in
driver.
to be the driver, and called us up. From a phone, a burner phone or whatever. It's like, hey, tomorrow I think he's meeting somebody for lunch in downtown Baghdad. And we're like, we really don't like, hitting targets in the middle of the day in downtown Baghdad. We prefer to kind of come in your house at like 2 a.m, blow the door off. But it was kind of going to be the chance that we had. So
Yeah.
then this was right at the end of our deployment. I mean, we didn't have much time left. And So we knew, I mean, at this point they had, especially, somebody like him had eyes everywhere. They had people watching all of the gates to each base. If somebody came out, they were watching where they were going. There's an entire network of surveillance set up. Uh, so you had to be very careful with, air support. We couldn't have anything like that. So somebody, and we're trying to figure this out, came up with the idea of using primarily civilian vehicles, use thin skinned vehicles, dress in, civilian clothes for those that could pull it off, up front.
Hmm.
I'm not going to do that. So, and, we staged like the day before at another small army outpost. It was relatively close, but it was not a base with special operations guys or anything like that. So them, a couple of vehicles leaving in the middle of the day probably wouldn't create any alarms. So we're sitting there just sweltering in the heat, was waiting and waiting, and then the phone, the buzzes on the roof of the vehicle, and our human guy picks it up, and it's his source, and he's like, "Hey, we're at this restaurant," and so we scream. I mean, it was. I wish we could have like filmed, had it filmed, but we're just screaming through traffic in downtown Baghdad and really big commercial sector, so it's traffic jam. We're like up on curbs, and old ladies are dropping their
It's
groceries,
like
and
a movie,
it
basically.
it it was, if you could have filmed it, it would have been great. We had a couple of guys with helmet cams that caught like bits and pieces of it, but one of the guys was who did, real dark complexion, had a beard, was up front, and he's just yelling out the window at people, and it's hilarious. So we pull up onto this sidewalk right in front of the restaurant. It probably the coolest thing I've ever seen, because I throw the back door of the van open, I jump out. This guy who has a white dish dash on, but he has it kind of slit, the white man dress basically over top his body armor and everything. Jumps out and just kind of throws it up like fistful of dollars or something, and like billows off of him, and he picks up his M4 and runs into the restaurant. And so we had obviously our source was sitting there at the table. We had to roll him up with everybody else, grab them all, and as we come in, some other guys had come in military vehicles up a back way, and so they're trying to move towards the back. We have guys coming in. Uh, a really nice restaurant. Everybody's in suits and eating, and run in, ID them, pretty quickly. We're able to grab them, get them out, and go, and get back to base safely. And that was really the final mission that we did, I think. And we got them back, and we're like, all right, we want to get some crack at interrogating this guy with our guys, our interrogators. And we got told, hey, no, no, we're gonna somebody's coming to pick this guy up. So
Yeah.
he was wanted by a lot of people. So that was really cool to kind of take him off the board, especially as one of our final acts before we left the country. So at that point, we had taken kind of two major players off the board. We had you know done, taken a lot of bomb makers. We had the opportunity, like I said, to kind of guard the lives of the vice president, some sniper operations, and a pretty volatile time in the job. So we felt very, very good about the work that we had done.
Yeah. I mean, that sounds like special operations to a T, like the way you're talking about rolling up, I think X with you got somebody, a woman from Grom, human folks there, operators, like
Yeah.
thin skinned vehicles, low vis. Sounds like what y'all were training to do.
Yeah, and it was um, you know what I certainly came to realize is we did not train a lot for that, for a lot of those
No,
things.
yeah.
Um, and what you realize is it all comes down to the people that you pick, right? You got to pick people who can have those sorts of ideas, think on the fly,
Yeah.
figure things out. And I can't beat the drum enough. The support guy, the intel folks, and the enablers that were, we would not have been successful without them.
Love hearing that. This is all 2004. You mentioned. Is Fallujah going on at some point during your rotation?
Yeah, it's going off while we're there. We don't. We wanted to go. We A lot of us had friends there. There was Force
Yeah,
Recon platoon there, but they wanted to keep us. They didn't want us necessarily working with Marines because that was kind of the function of the test, right? To see how we could integrate with the Joint Force and with Joint SOF. So while Fallujah was really kind of banging, the Joff was not to the same degree, but it was pretty hot. So we went there and we're, like I said, focused on sniper operations.
and just from what people have heard of Fallujah, clearing houses for an entire city, basically room by room. Are you hearing this stuff going on, and like as the days go by through that month,
Oh yeah,
following some of this?
yeah. We had because we had access to more things than the
Yeah,
than the average
sure.
Force Recon platoon would. Whenever they got the chance, they would, those guys would swing by and we'd try to take care of them. So yeah, they were, heavily involved in that. They'd had I don't they'd had some injuries and fatalities there, so that was definitely we're keeping tabs on
Yeah.
what was going on with those folks.
Wow. So I'll wrap this up here shortly, John. Just a couple more things. One is, as you were writing the book, I'm wondering, like, you probably go back and talk to some of these folks that you had served with to get some more insight. Did you learn anything new about some of these events that you took part in through writing the book or researching it?
Absolutely. The one thing I would not have been, because I'm not like a journal keeper. I wish I was. I should become
Yeah,
one.
same here.
But the uh, the the Marine Corps Historical Society or whatever, had a guy write a history of Det One. So that was
Wow.
absolutely critical to me, knowing when things happened and dates and things like that.
Yeah.
But and there were absolutely, anytime you're in a small unit, I mean, you're kind of fixated on what your team's doing. So even what the team next to you is doing, you're not as familiar with. But I did. There were a couple of people I relied really heavily on. One was the guy who served as my assistant team leader and spotter during our sniper operations. For him, I would write stuff and send it to him and be like, "Hey, man, is this? Do you remember everything happening this way?"
Yeah.
There's absolutely some times where I make it kind of very clear that, hey, this is what I remember from where I was. Um, Other people might remember differently or have seen things differently, or so I mean, writing a memoir or nonfiction, you have a requirement to be factual, right? But
Yeah.
the you know when you really start digging into what is truth, it's not all cut and dry all the
No.
time. So I feel like I hopefully did a good job and I really wrote it from my perspective. So it's my story, not anybody else's.
Yeah.
Certainly a good bit of it, the overarching framework is our story, and it's just a story that definitely deserves to be told, and it's a pretty fucking awesome story. But it's just through one guy's eyes.
Yeah.
So any omissions or errors in it are mine.
And you mentioned earlier, you alluded to, you kind of had this idea of a book in the back of your mind earlier in your career. Where does that come from? Was it from reading these past experiences, some of those FBI reports that you talked about? Where does that come from for you?
I mean, even as a kid, I was a huge reader. I just always loved reading. When I grew up, my dad and that's my dad's responsible for that, right? Big library of like Hardy Boys and Zane Grey and,
Hmm.
Call of the Wild, Jack London, just on and on and on, reading about adventure. So I really think that's, kind of initially what pushed me to, uh, but as a kid, I'm like, hey, I want to be the guy that has cool adventures and writes about it. Um, that why that kind of took a backseat. The Marine Corps doesn't really encourage creative writing. Uh, I did write some articles on things
Yeah,
like that for professional publications. And the seeing your name on something that's published is really cool. So
that is.
the first time I saw that, I'm like, yeah, I want more of this. Um, Spending my time to go to get the Master of Fine Arts degree in writing. Of course, I kind of felt obligated that I needed to write something.
Yeah.
So I had written one, and it kind of serves as a kind of the opening of the book, and then I talk about it later, that Najaf sniper battle, and I had written something about that while I was going through the writing program, and I thought it was the best thing in the world. Right, so I submitted it to all of these places like 30 times, and I got denied 30 times. And it was like, nah. Um,
Like, are you
and
talking publishers, like
well,
book publishers, or magazines?
this was just as an essay, right? The
Yeah.
initial thing, I was submitting it to places, and they kept like, no, it's we don't want it, or it doesn't quite fit our aesthetic, or this or that. So the one thing I've you know fortunately learned in my career is just you don't fucking quit. Right. So I'm like, fuck you guys. I would just tally up. I'm like, 30 of you motherfuckers don't want it. Right. I'm gonna find one that does. That I There was a lady who was writing a nonfiction book about the Marine Raiders in World War II, and she got a hold of me through a friend, and I was helping her. She was asking some questions, and I was trying to provide her with some information. And we were talking about my writing, and she was like, "You have something I could read?" And I was like, "Here." I sent her this essay, and she's, emails me like a couple days later. She's like, "Hey, I hope you don't mind, but I sent it to my agent, and he wants to represent you, and he wants you to turn this into a book."
Good for you,
And
John.
I'm like, "Holy shit!" So that's kind of how the book came to be, and he was very quickly able to get a book deal with the publisher, and they're like, how much time do you need? I'm like, give me a year. I need a year.
Yeah.
I probably should have said 8 months. I think I would have turned up the fire a little bit, but as it was, it took about 11. I mean, working full time, everything else
Sure.
to get it on paper, and then where it needed to be, and then realized that the Department of Defense has to get a crack at it. So they took it, and that was 6 months of them
Oh,
reviewing
I was
it.
hoping
And
you'd say like 2 or 3. 6 months, man.
now I think I just had another friend who went through the process, and I think it took him between 2 and 3. But
Okay.
the book talks about naval special warfare. It talks
Yeah.
about USOCOM, MARSOC, and so they
Oh,
a lot of different entities had to go through it, and so it came back with not a lot, and not things I would have expected, but redactions and things I had to change. Um,
yeah.
Not nothing major.
And only because you've referenced this, are you okay sharing the sniper story with us?
Absolutely. Um, just the what happened, not the reading it.
No, not reading it.
Yeah. Okay. Yeah. All right.
Yeah,
Gotcha.
describing what, because you've alluded to it a couple times, and it
Okay.
does sound very interesting, especially if this is the thing that kind of catapulted you into
Yeah.
writing an entire book around it.
Yeah. So we had, like I said, the Joff was kicking off. The Mahdi army was had kind of housed themselves within what is called in Najaf the Imam Ali Mosque, and it's the third holiest site for Shia Muslims. Right, it's this big ass golden dome inside a massive compound, huge walls. Um, because of the fact that it's like it's a very significant cultural and historical and religious site. They had basically cordoned off a big section of the town and said, "Hey, conventional troops are not allowed to go anywhere in here," because there was fear of damaging the dome, and the dome is covered in. And this was part of the research, but 777 gold tiles, and it's like solid gold. I don't know what carat or whatever, but I mean it's a pretty pricey roof. Um, So we got into town, met up with the Army unit, a CAV unit that was on the outskirts, and they're like, "Hey, we can't go any further." I'm like, "Well, that doesn't apply to us, right?" And they're like, "Nah, you guys can go where you want." Um, so we, worked our way into the town to a what had been a hotel. I think it was completely got wiped out, but one of the taller buildings, made our way into it, and at night, and myself and uh, my buddy Mike moved up to the roof of the building and were kind of observing as the sun came up. And when it did, there was, you know, Taliban or not Taliban, just insurgents kind of moving freely around the street because they knew that they didn't think that they could be seen. But we saw a couple guys and then a kid ish. I mean, he was certainly a fighting age, but he was younger. And he kind of gets younger in my head all the time.
Yeah, I bet.
But walking up with an RPK over his shoulder, and I was like, I'm gonna, take this guy out, and so I did, and that it didn't it doesn't bother me. I mean, he had a gun, he would have shot me. But I was thinking at the time, I just, my son was at that point not as old as him, but kind of, in the kind of hitting the puberty
Yeah.
area, and so I've always kind of, connected those two in a way. So when I started writing, and I wrote that first essay about that was I think the first time I wrote something that was like real and kind of cathartic or whatever in
Yeah.
a after a fashion, and which is of course why I was like really proud of it and thought it was awesome, and it was rightfully it wasn't, I needed work, so it after multiple iterations it kind of, and that taught me a lot about writing, that
Hmm.
it's you got to have emotion in it, but you can't be emotional about it. Um,
Yeah.
and
Interesting.
that you can, which is, all, kind of the same thing as combat, right?
Yeah.
You've got to, you got to have the love of your team, the love of the mission, the love of your country, all these things. But it's, things start to go bad when you get too emotional about the outcome and about,
Well said.
hating the enemy. And so that's what I have the opportunity to do now in my present job is talk about like combat mindset and things like that, but also, ethics and kind of leadership and provide mentorship to a whole, generation of Marine Raiders. So I get a lot of time to think about these things and
Yeah.
and talk about them. So we talk about that quite a lot. That particularly after 9/11, like you mentioned it. I mean, everybody wanted revenge, right? We wanted retribution, but you realize that yeah, that's not terribly healthy. I mean, you can't be your best if you're kind of in a white hot anger. You've got to be
Hmm.
kind of cool, calm, and collected. And I think that's really what special operations training and special operations assessment selection brings out, or builds in guys, is that ability to look objectively at the situation without becoming, while remaining detached, I guess.
And that specific engagement in the JOF that you're describing, it sounds like you didn't feel guilt necessarily, but there's something there that's weighing on you to some degree because this person's young, walking with the weapon, and you're feeling something. Is that kind of where it's coming from?
Yeah, I think it, and it wasn't at the time, really. I
Yeah.
don't, I don't think there wasn't time to think about it or ponder much about it. But I think it was really when I sat down and I was like, man, I've got to write something. I got to write something awesome. And for this class, right, that I was taking, and I'm like, I'm going to write about that. And then kind of the more I started thinking about them, like there's certainly parallels. It's
Yeah.
of the people that I've shot, and it's, not a huge number, but it's more than a couple.
Yeah.
Um, he's the only one that I continue to like, not continue. I mean, it's not like he in my dreams or anything like that, but from time to time I'll kind of think back about him.
Yeah.
And that's I think probably, I don't know. I can't speak for other people, but I suspect a lot of people have someone,
Yep.
if they that for one reason or another sticks out in their memory.
I got to imagine there weren't many essays written like that one in that class.
No, no, it was interesting because what you do is called workshopping. All right, so
Yeah.
you got like 8 or 9 people in the class. You make copies for everybody, paper copies. You hand them to them, and they've got to read them and then come back in the next class. And you're not allowed to talk, but they have to talk about it. And it was almost comical. If it hadn't been for the fact that I was very very self conscious and nervous about what they were going to say,
Yeah.
I think I would have been snickering. But yeah, they were. Trying to be very delicate, with everybody's feelings, and
Sure.
but they were also, it was, you could see that, I mean, that's what kind of what writing is supposed to do, right? Is instill something in you, move you in some ways. And I was like, man, that's the first thing that I written that I really felt I had accomplished that with people. Um, so and it also, it just, at the end of it, I'm like, hey man, I will answer any questions that you
Yeah.
guys have. I don't care how stupid you think they are or how gory or whatever, you know. Because I talk, about in the essay, here's what happened to the bullet as it was going through you. Here's what was happening inside your body, and kind of, it was written as called a epistolary, like written as a letter to him when I initially wrote it.
Mm,
Which was kind of powerful, also kind of
wow.
cool, kind of
Yeah.
badass. But it was kind of struck the, I guess, like what I was trying to do with it, with writing. And then you realize that, like shooting, writing is a thing that you can get better at, with practice. And there's techniques that you use in certain situations. So once I could look at it from that perspective, it's just, like going back to the stalking I was talking about.
Hmm.
Once you realize you can kind of see, through a window to the target, and you're like, okay, I've done this once, so I can do it again.
Nice. Wow. So the last two questions I ask everybody, these are short ones, John. The first is there anything when you were deployed that you carried with you that had sentimental value, good luck charm, something that somebody had given you that you just wanted on you or near you?
Hmm. Um, I had this laminated picture of my wife on one side, my kids on the other. It was laminated.
Where'd you carry it?
In my usually my left kind of breast pocket.
It's
I
cool.
check it out from time to time. I'm not a real. I mean, I'd always carry a knife, but not a specific one.
Hmm.
Not one of the guys who's really in love with a particular thing. So I can't. No, I wish I would have carried a camera. I'm
Oh,
horrible
tell me
about
about it.
that.
Yeah.
The guys today, one, there's so many cameras on phones and
Yeah.
everything, and they always have great pictures of things, but I was never good at
Not
that.
us. No. And then the last one is just, very long time in service, especially in some really hard and elite units and tough moments downrange, near death experiences. As you look back at all those years you put in, would you do it again?
Oh, absolutely.
Yeah, I figured.
Absolutely, absolutely.
So the book, Tough Rugged Bastards, people can get it wherever you buy books. Um, how about for you? Is there a place online that people can find you, John?
Absolutely. The easiest is jadaily.com. That's kind of the website for the book. There's links to the Substacks that I write. You can get
Okay,
on those. It may have social media stuff. I'm not terribly good with those, but I try to
I
post
hear
some
you.
things on it from time to time.
Great. All right, perfect.
And
We'll have
and
links.
people can reach out on there too. Reach out to me if they shoot an email or whatever, questions or whatever.
No, that's so good. So appreciative of the time, John. This was great, and I can't wait to get my hands on this book. I think I can see it just slightly blurred in the background. You got a few of them
Yeah,
up there,
I do
so
have a couple. Yeah.
can't wait. This will be great.
Awesome.
Thanks so much for the time, John.
Thanks for having me on. I really appreciate it.
I hope you enjoyed that second round combat story with John. Easily one of my favorites, and John's background just throughout the Marine Corps, but then standing up MARSOC and being a part of that from the beginning is just so special. And really cool to hear all the insight. I can't wait to get my hands on that book. So, as usual, you can check out our newsletter at combatstory.com/newsletter. You can support us at patreon.com/combatstory to help keep all of this going. And a couple listener comments from our 4th of July special. If you didn't hear it, this was some of our responses that we've had over the past few months to the "Would you do it again?" question that we ask at the end of every interview, spliced in between a pretty heartfelt speech from President Reagan back in 1986 on the 4th of July in New York Harbor. The first comment is from Carl Fisher, 4163, subscriber. It says, "Thank you for this tribute. Where is President Reagan now when we do desperately need him? Thank you so much." And then Goodwin Sooners 3520, one of the greatest speeches from Reagan. Man, to have leaders like him again, blessed to live in what is still the greatest country in the history of mankind. And then VB Adventure Guy, another subscriber. Thank you for putting this up. And with that, wherever you are in the world, hope you have a great rest of your day, week, weekend, and as always, stay safe.